When I was a kid, we lived in a house that was close to a forest. My brother and I would go out and play different make-believe games in the woods, and sometimes we would find other neighborhood kids there. One of these kids that we met was named Joseph, and he lived pretty close to us. We ended up going over to his house one time, and in his room he had a huge medieval Lego set. One of the games Joseph liked to play was War, as he would call it. It was a game with not a lot of rules, and since I was the youngest of the three of us, it would usually involve my brother and Joseph on one side and me on the other. We would begin by setting up our respective sides. Joseph would give me my units, and he would keep his units, which were usually the best ones. We would place our units behind various Lego barricades, and when he said go, we would take turns trying to defeat the other army with our units. Now keep in mind, we were kids in the age before the internet was widespread. We'd never heard of Warhammer, Dungeons & Dragons, or any other tabletop game like this, besides Monopoly, but that's kind of a far stretch. This was just kids using their imagination to wage Lego war. This is where the seed was planted, a game where you needed to think tactically, not just quickly. It was like chess, but I was actually interested in it. And little did I know, when I was a teenager, this memory would come flooding back when a little game called XCOM, Enemy Unknown, came out. I've played video games since probably 1998. My earliest memory of playing video games was playing some sort of track and field game on my dad's Atari. I had no idea how it worked, but I remember spending a lot of time just trying to figure it out. Then we bought a Nintendo 64, and so many more approachable games entered. Yoshi's Story, Super Smash Bros., Battle Tanks, Donkey Kong 64, Rampage, Super Mario 64, Turok. I mean, we were at Blockbuster almost every weekend renting a new game. R.I.P. Blockbuster. So it's safe to say I've played a lot of video games, and I'd like to think it spans a pretty wide variety of genres. So when I say XCOM was something new, I mean it was unlike anything I had played before. I began hearing about it in the few years prior to its release in 2012 and heard things like an ant farm base builder. I had no idea what that was supposed to mean. Squad-based tactics was something I wasn't quite sure of, but my brother was raving about it, so when it was released, I bought a copy. And it hooked me like nothing else ever had. Never before had I played a game where I was entrusted with soldiers who looked like main characters but could actually die, and the game would go on. Or where soldiers came back and had to heal up before the next battle, so I had to find other soldiers to take their place in the field because a UFO had just crashed nearby and I just can't let that opportunity pass. And I can't neglect my base. I have to research new equipment, build new facilities for training, fabricate new utility items, dissect enemy units to uncover new research projects, and it just kept me zeroed in the whole time. The tabletop nature of the combat was something really unique to me as well. I had never played a tabletop game like Warhammer before, and so seeing a movement zone, a tactical placement of defensive structures, percentage-based shots, flanking, all of this tactical stuff was really eye-opening to me, and I absolutely loved it. Now hear me when I say I am not the brightest when it comes to tactical strategy. I love strategy games, but many times I get frustrated when one plan goes wrong or when something goes on for too long, and then that's where I make a mistake because I'm rushing or I've already given up. But even then, the game is still compelling to me. I've been in situations where I was sure I was going to lose this battle. I was flanked from all sides, but miraculously, the enemy shot missed and I had one more turn. I was able to turn things around and make it out alive. And it's in those moments where the game truly shines. The soldier you had since the beginning, you stylized them, colored their hair, and gave them a cool nickname like Edward Bullet Hands. He starts to become your favorite soldier. You invest time into making them perfect, and they become a super soldier under your command. And then there's that mission. The one mission where everything was supposed to go according to plan. It was easy, a simple smash and grab. Only the game decided it was time for Edward Bullet Hands to die. You rush in with your team, and every 95% chance shot misses. Not once, but twice in a row. Now before you continue, you stand up out of your chair, go touch the grass, and play with your dog, because for the first time in your life you thought about throwing your computer out of the window. Then, when you finally come back to the game, Eddie is deady. And now comes a critical moment in your XCOM career. Will you load back to the beginning of the mission? Or will you grit your teeth, tighten the bandana around your head, and honor the memory of Edward Bullet Hands by slaying the aliens who dared to come to this planet and... Yeah, you're probably going to load the game to a previous save. I want to take a brief moment to give some food for thought here. The soldiers that you've recruited to the XCOM program are the, quote, best of the best. Now, these are soldiers from all over the world. You are not limited to the American military or any other military. They come from all countries. It's the Olympics of the military. So I think it would only be logical for these battle-hardened veterans to be able to hit a stationary target 20 feet away from them. I'm not done yet. Let's look at the U.S. military. According to military.com, to get an expert badge in the Army's marksmanship training, keep in mind this is just the Army, not the Marines or other special training forces, a soldier must hit at least 36 out of 40 targets that vary from ranges 5 meters to 300 meters, or 5.5 to 328 yards for us on the medieval England system. Now let's assume that all or most of the XCOM operatives are in the expert range because, well, they're supposed to be the, quote, best of the best. So you're telling me that an expert marksman cannot hit their target that's 10 meters away? Sorry, pups. Sorry, pups. It's okay. I'm just yelling. My dog started barking because I was yelling. Listen, I am all for tactics and getting into the right position to strike the enemy, but when something like this happens...
Damn it! Enemy is still alive!
18 of my brain cells explode and suddenly something in my house is broken. Okay, let's get past all of that and move on. So what is the main gameplay of XCOM? Is it the combat or is it the base building? And maybe it's the grand strategy of the map, building satellites and connecting with the different continents to gain more resources and control and keep the council happy. I'm asking this question because to me, that's all part of the main game. The combat is incredible, but so is the research and building of the base and the grand strategy aspect. Firaxis pulled off something really special when they came together to create XCOM. There had been other games similar to the concept, but XCOM redesigned it in such a way that it's become its own genre. If someone is trying to describe a game to you today, they may even use the phrase, it's XCOM-like, or it's like XCOM. And now you have a mental picture of what that game is like. Some games I would describe in this way are games like Mutant Year Zero, Road to Eden, or Miasma Chronicles, which are both developed by the beautiful Bearded Ladies, in which they focus on mainly the tabletop combat aspect of XCOM, but they also really build upon the stealth mechanic, mainly present in XCOM 2. But the combat follows the same grid-like movement and action point system that we would see in XCOM. These are both beautiful gems that I would recommend to any fan of the XCOM series or just fans of turn-based tactics in general. But some other games that you could describe as XCOM-like are War Tales or Battletech. This is the police, especially the second one. And there's even a kids version of these types of games. It's Mario plus Rabbids. I don't know, it's Mario and Mario plus, I don't know, Kingdom Battle. And of course there's Phoenix Point that was developed by the original developer of the XCOM games, so be sure to give that one some love too. Oh, and one more that I think I would give the XCOM-like tag to would be a little game called
Battle Brothers.
Yeah, Battle Brothers uses hex grids, not squares, but if I don't mention Battle Brothers, the Dream Eaters will come.
Battle Brothers.
But how did XCOM stick out to me? How did it become the forerunner to all these games I've listed? Well, XCOM uniquely blended its components in such a way that it was truly stellar. The cover mechanic alone, I've seen recreated in countless games now. I don't think finding cover was a unique idea before this, but the way that XCOM utilized it with half cover, full cover, flanking, etc., all that kind of stuff was something people loved. Then you look at the overall tactics, going in with the right types of units, where to place them, being patient versus rushing in. Firaxis gave us lots of options to approach the problem, especially in the second game, but instead of just one head-on way to solve it, you could do multiple different things. I think a quarter of my hours in XCOM are just looking at the game map and deciding, okay, well, where should I place my heavy? How about the sniper? Once she moves in, she won't be able to attack, so I need to have her in a good spot. These internal dialogues are huge to me. If you were a fly on the wall in my room, you would think I'm having a stroke because I'm just staring at a map, not doing anything. Internally dialoguing on if I should rush, flank, or wait. Literally making pros and cons lists in my head. I could go on and on about the combat in this game, and it's just where you will spend the longest amount of time due to the strategy nature of the game. It's probably the thing that makes me keep coming back to it, or searching for games like it. The strategy of the setup and execution makes me feel like I'm in SEAL Team 6 or something. I love it. Another aspect to the combat is deciding which path to go down with your units. When you would level your units to the next rank, they gain one of two abilities, either active or passive, that they can take into every battle. Some of these abilities may be an easy choice, but others can be more challenging to choose, and there's no takebacks with that. Well, sort of. You could always rip their appendages off and make them into a battle mech, forever changing their life in an irreversible way just to be like all Gundam style, but if you do this, now you get to reapply their points to a completely new tree. I mean, who needs to feel the loving embrace of a loved one when you have a pile driver arm to obliterate all of your feelings and a flamethrower to bring the warmth you'll never feel again inside? And did any games before XCOM ever have the ant farm view of the base? I don't remember ever seeing anything like this, and for me it was mind-blowing. I mean, what a beautiful concept. I love seeing my little people run around the base, researching, building, hanging out. Truly a unique way to introduce strategy to base building with just this view. You don't have unlimited space or resources, and you need to think about potential bonuses down the line by the way you place your buildings. So are you going to wait to place that satellite array and put off making contact with the next continent, or do you just build it now, knowing that you won't be able to get an adjacency bonus for a long while because you've got to clear out all the rooms around it? It really was an ingenious thing for Firaxis to do. Of course, they're familiar with strategy, but they really worked to make XCOM have its own strategy elements that weren't present in other similar games. And then there's the geoscape portion of the game, where you primarily fast forward time and then wait for the next event to happen. This could range from UFO sightings and landings to enemy assaults on your own compound to stopping alien abductions. Now, this is usually a simple mechanic that shows you when the next project will be completed in the lower right-hand corner, and you get to see the little globe spin around. But then there are times, especially when you have the DLC, Enemy Within, where you could get literally non-stop events. I would complete a mission only to come back and hit the fast forward button and immediately be put into the next mission. A council mission, then a covert ops mission, then an abduction, an attack, a UFO, like all right after the other, and all my soldiers were in the hospital. Now this only happened to me once, so it wasn't a common occurrence, and I don't remember this ever happening in the sequel, so I believe they fixed it, but it was hilariously infuriating when it happened. The marriage of these gameplay elements made the game something special. It was genuinely hard to make the council give you the best ratings and also balance all the other things you needed to take care of. It was a great first step for Firaxis with the XCOM series, and I was completely hooked by the first game. There were absolutely similar-ish games before XCOM Enemy Unknown. For starters, this was not the first XCOM game. Mythos Games, with Julian Gollop at the helm, created UFO Enemy Unknown in 1994, with other games being added to the franchise like XCOM Terror from the Deep, and then some others that I've never heard of like XCOM Apocalypse and XCOM Interceptor. These were of course much earlier releases, so they lacked the clean look of the current games, but they were predecessors that would pave the way for what it has become today. There were also games like Fallout Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics, the old Warhammer games like 40K Chaos Gate, the one from '98. There were several games that were definitely modeling this tabletop-like format as video games, so why are none of them seen as genre-defining like I'm claiming XCOM to be? What sets XCOM apart? I think there are a number of factors here. Of course, I've outlined a lot of these reasons I believe this to be true in the last section, but I also think there are a few other reasons for this. One of these reasons is the difficulty aspect of XCOM. In the strategic overview of XCOM, one mistake may not kill your whole run, but it can certainly kill Dolores, the newest XCOM recruit fresh out of military school.
I can't take much more of this!
Or if you choose to make 3 satellites instead of new spaceships, you might just let 3 UFOs pass you by and now your council rating drops down to a C. There's a strategy to every decision in XCOM. Unlike in Civ 5, for example, when you research the wrong thing, you're very likely going to have no adverse side effects in that game. Another reason is the AI of the XCOM games is actually decent, especially for its time. You could change the difficulty on it for sure, but the higher difficulty is actually very unforgiving and quite challenging. The AI would react to what you did, actively trying to flank you, or if your soldiers grouped up, Muton would chunk a grenade at you, destroying your cover and your pride. It wasn't perfect, and several people have learned how to cheese the AI, but it was really compared to, and I know I'm picking on it, but games like Civ 5. It was like you were playing against another player in a chess-like match of wits. I would move my rook here, and you counter with your bishop there. It had its limitations, sure, but if you screwed up, you were going to face the consequences. Move a soldier up too far and the enemy would swarm them from all sides. This was huge for me, as I had not really played a lot of these types of games until XCOM. And that leads me to my last point about why it's successful. XCOM was, and still is, approachable. In a traditional sense, Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, and other tabletop games have rules upon rules, or even if you don't think so, think about the amount of reading that is either completely necessary or at least kind of necessary if you want to understand it all truly. XCOM throws you into a system that is easy to understand but difficult to master. And this is a compelling way to grab hold of players in the beginning and ease them into the comfort of thinking that they have it all figured out before rushing into an ambush and killing Ronald, the new recruit. The tutorial is not overbearing because the system is not overcomplicated. This may have been Firaxis's biggest accomplishment, making XCOM a game that the average player could understand. If you wanted to go in and micromanage your aim, will, and other stats, you could, but you could also just strap on the best gear you think and run into the fray and still do a pretty good job. Because of this design, XCOM was accessible to the average person, and to be honest, it's the first game of its type that I understood enough to open the door into other tactical, squad-based games. I probably never would have entered the Warhammer universe without looking for other games that were like XCOM. Warhammer certainly has been doing this a lot longer, but it's harder to get into for the average Joe. If you've never tried XCOM, it's only $30 on Steam, and I'm sure it goes on sale frequently like every good game should. The sequel, XCOM 2, which I hardly touched on in this video, is also an incredibly good game and improves upon a lot of areas of the original game. They're both absolutely worth it. I didn't even mention the Bureau, which shouldn't be mentioned, and Chimera Squad, which is a really decent game, and it's a lot smaller, cheaper, but a really decent game too. I think it's worth grabbing, especially if you're a fan of this type of game. Find a Steam sale and get on the hype train. I'm mainly pushing this so Firaxis will understand that they need to give us XCOM 3. So please buy XCOM, and if you already own it, buy another copy, give it to that kid on your street that plays too much Fortnite. After all, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world by talking kids out of playing Fortnite so we can actually have good games again. Or something like that. Thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me. I'd love to do more stuff like this, so if it's something you like, please leave a like and subscribe to let me know that you like it too. I hope you have a wonderful day, week, and year. Be kind to others and live differently.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me